Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a time when you wake up and realize you've given too much time, too much energy, too much of yourself to people who never truly valued you. You stood by them when they were weak. You fought their battles. You sacrificed your peace to protect theirs. And when the tables turned, silence, absence, abandon. You bled for them, now let them bleed in regret. Not through revenge, not through anger, but through your absence, through the undeniable, irreplaceable void you leave behind when you finally walk away. See, life has a brutal but necessary lesson. It teaches you who truly stands beside you when the storm arrives. And when you finally recognize that some people were only there for what you could give, that's when you reclaim your power. Understand this: there is no honor in being a martyr for those who would never do the same for you. Self-sacrifice is only meaningful when it's mutual. When it's not, it's just self-destruction. So you take that pain, the betrayal, the disappointment, and you use it, not to become bitter, but to become better. You build yourself into something they never believed you could be. You rise from the ashes of their indifference, stronger, wiser, untouchable. And one day they will look back, they will remember, and they will regret, because they will see that the person they dismissed, the one they took for granted, was the person they should have valued most. So let them feel the weight of their choices, not through your words, not through your anger, but through the undeniable truth of your success and absence. They let you bleed for them. Now, let them bleed in regret. The cost of self-sacrifice. There's a profound difference between giving and being drained. Many of us grow up believing that sacrifice is a virtue, that putting others before ourselves is the highest form of morality, and in some ways, that's true. A society thrives when its members act with generosity, with kindness, with a willingness to help those in need. But here's the problem. What happens when that sacrifice is not met with gratitude, but expectation? What happens when the more you give, the more people demand, until there's nothing left of you to offer? Self-sacrifice is only meaningful when it is recognized, reciprocated, and valued. But too often, it becomes a one-way street, where you pour your energy, time, and emotional reserves into people who take without a second thought. You tell yourself it's the right thing to do. You convince yourself that loyalty, patience, and endurance will eventually be rewarded. But the reality is far harsher. Many people will take everything you give and still walk away the moment they no longer need you. This is the trap so many fall into. They believe that their worth is measured by how much they can endure for others, rather than by how much they respect themselves. They ignore the warning signs, the constant exhaustion, the quiet resentment, the feeling of being used, because they've been conditioned to think that setting boundaries is selfish. But it's not. In fact, the refusal to set boundaries is what allows the world to take advantage of you. The truth is, if you give without limits, people will take without guilt. It is not cruelty that teaches them this. It is convenience. And until you recognize that your time, energy, and emotional well-being are finite resources, you will continue to drain yourself for people who do not deserve it. You must ask yourself, are you sacrificing for people who would do the same for you? Or are you bleeding yourself dry for those who would leave you behind the moment it no longer benefits them? Because if it's the latter, you are not being noble. You are being naive. And naivety in this world is not rewarded. It is exploited. The cost of self-sacrifice is not just exhaustion. It's the realization, too late, that you gave your best to those who never deserved it. The nature of betrayal. Betrayal is not always a grand cinematic act of treachery. It is not always the dagger in the back, the dramatic moment of deception. More often, it is something quieter, something colder. It is the slow erosion of trust, the steady withdrawal of loyalty, the silence that grows where there was once support. The people who betray you are rarely your enemies. Enemies are predictable. You know where they stand, you understand their intent, and you expect nothing from them. No, betrayal comes from those you once called friends, from those you stood by in their darkest moments, from the very people who once swore they would never leave your side. And when the time comes, when you find yourself in need, you realize there is no one there. They have vanished. And in that absence, in that deafening silence, you learn the harshest lesson of all. Loyalty is not always reciprocated. There is a dangerous assumption we make about the people we love. We assume that because we would never abandon them, they would never abandon us. We assume that because we were willing to bleed for them, they would do the same. But this is not always true. Some people take loyalty for granted. Some see kindness as weakness, and some, whether out of fear, selfishness, or simple indifference, will leave you the moment it no longer serves them to stay. But betrayal does not happen in a vacuum. It is not just about what they did, it is about what you allowed. Every ignored red flag, every excuse you made for their behavior, every time you convinced yourself that they would change, these were the cracks that let the betrayal happen. And this is the hardest truth to accept. Betrayal is not just about them. It is also about you. It is about your failure to see things as they were. Does this mean you should never trust anyone? No. Trust is necessary. It is the foundation of every meaningful relationship. But trust should not be given blindly. It must be earned, tested, proven over time. And when it is broken, you must not waste your energy trying to rebuild something that was never as strong as you believed it to be. The pain of betrayal is sharp, but it is also clarifying. It teaches you who is truly in your corner and who is only there for their own benefit. It forces you to redefine your standards, to guard your loyalty, to recognize that not everyone who walks beside you is meant to go the distance. Because in the end, betrayal does not just reveal the truth about them, it reveals the truth about you, about what you tolerated, about what you overlooked, and about the strength you will need to walk away from those who were never truly with you in the first place. The power of self-respect. Respect is not something you ask for. It is something you command, not through force, not through demands, but through the way you carry yourself, the standards you set, and the boundaries you enforce. People will treat you exactly how you allow them to treat you. If you do not respect yourself, do not expect others to do it for you. Many people live their lives bending over backward to please others, sacrificing their needs, their dignity, and even their identity just to fit into someone else's expectations. They believe that if they are kind enough, patient enough, forgiving enough, people will recognize their worth. But that is not how the world works. The world does not reward self-neglect. It does not admire those who let themselves be walked over. It simply takes advantage of them. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate. If you constantly excuse disrespect, if you let others violate your boundaries without consequence, they will keep doing it, not because they are inherently cruel, but because you have shown them that it is acceptable. And once a pattern is established, it becomes nearly impossible to break unless you decide to change the rules of the game. Self-respect is not arrogance, it is not selfishness, it is the fundamental recognition that you are not an object to be used at someone else's convenience. It is the ability to say no without guilt, to walk away from situations that drain you, to refuse to accept less than what you deserve. And make no mistake, there will be people who resent you for it. The ones who benefited from your self-sacrifice will call you selfish. The ones who thrived off your silence will accuse you of being difficult. But that is not a reflection of you. It is a reflection of how much they relied on your lack of boundaries. The moment you start respecting yourself, you will notice a shift. Some people will disappear from your life. Let them. Those who only valued you when you were convenient are not a loss. They are a lesson. And those who remain, they will be the ones who truly deserve a place in your life. Because at the end of the day, self-respect is not about how others see you. It is about how you see yourself. And when you stand firm in your worth, the world will have no choice but to recognize it too. Transformation through pain. Pain is life's most honest teacher. It does not flatter, it does not lie, and it does not allow you to remain blind to the truth. It strips away illusions, forces you to confront your reality, and if you allow it, turns you into something stronger than you ever imagined. Most people see pain as something to be avoided at all costs. They run from it, numb it, deny it, pretending that if they just ignore it long enough, it will disappear. But pain does not disappear. It waits. It lingers in the background, shaping your fears, influencing your decisions, holding you back in ways you don't even recognize. And until you face it, until you allow yourself to feel it, process it, and learn from it, it will control you. The truth is, suffering is inevitable. At some point, life will break you. People will betray you, dreams will shatter, the world will disappoint you in ways you never expected. But what happens next is entirely up to you. You can allow that pain to destroy you, to make you bitter, to turn you into someone who lashes out at the world. Or you can use it. You can take every wound, every scar, every moment of heartbreak, and let it forge you into something unbreakable. Growth does not come from comfort. It comes from discomfort, from struggle, from being forced to adapt and overcome. The strongest people you know, the ones who carry themselves with confidence, who walk with purpose, who command respect, were not born that way. They were made in the fire. They took their pain and turned it into wisdom. They refused to let their suffering be meaningless. You have that same choice. You can stay down, let your wounds define you, and spend your life trapped in resentment. Or you can rise, rebuild, and become something so powerful that even those who once hurt you will be forced to acknowledge what you have become. Because pain is not just something to endure, it is something to transform. And if you use it correctly, it will turn you into someone who no longer fears the fire. Because you have become the fire. Let regret be their teacher. Regret is a silent teacher, and those who took you for granted will one day be forced to learn its lessons, not because you seek revenge, not because you go out of your way to make them suffer, but because the consequences of their choices will eventually catch up to them. People often fail to recognize the value of what they have until it is gone. They assume you will always be there. They assume your kindness, your patience, your loyalty are endless. And so they take without thought, without gratitude, without ever considering what life would be like without you. But nothing in this world is limitless, not time, not energy, and certainly not the presence of someone who truly cared. One day they will look around and realize that something is missing, that the person who once supported them, who stood by them in their weakest moments, is no longer there. And it will not be your words that haunt them, it will be your absence. Regret is not something you can force upon someone. It is something they must arrive at on their own. It happens in quiet moments, in late-night thoughts, in the realization that the people they surrounded themselves with do not care the way you did. It happens when they reach for support and find only emptiness, but by then it will be too late. Because when you finally choose yourself, when you stop chasing, stop explaining, stop waiting, you step into a version of yourself that no longer needs their validation. And that is when they truly lose. Not because you punished them, but because they finally see what they let slip away. So do not waste your time seeking closure. Do not waste your energy proving your worth to those who refuse to see it. Walk away with dignity. Build yourself into something so undeniable that their only option is to sit with the weight of their own mistakes. Let them learn, let them regret, but most importantly, let yourself move forward. Because their lesson is not your burden to carry.